Welcome to another episode of Kings and Queens of Miniature Castles. Big thing for season 2, we have video. So this is a fun startup, learning all the things about it. But anyways, so I am your host, Jake, here to learn more about just the various things of life. Today with me, we have Michelle Lundeen.
Hi.
And then now, Michelle, so you are the premier realtor, feels like, here in the
thanks.
Cambridge area. Want to tell us more about first yourself and then just how you got into realty?
I can. Hi, I'm Michelle Lundeen, and I am with Remax Results. I have a team. It's under the name of Team Lundeen, and we have an office right in Cambridge, Minnesota. Remax Results is owned by John Colopy, and there's about 42 offices throughout the metro area and into Wisconsin and northern and a little bit southern Minnesota as well. So it's a great brokerage. It's lots of agents, lots of great energy within our brokerage as well, which I really appreciate. And I have been doing this for about 22 years.
Okay. Were you doing something before that?
So when I got into real estate, I actually have a degree in psychology. I graduated from Crown College in St. Bonifacius, Minnesota. And with a psychology degree, you pretty much either have to go on to get your master's or your doctorate, or you end up in a job like I had, where I was working with juvenile delinquent kids. And I got really tired of being hit and spit on and swore at and restraining 10-year-old boys. Like, I was like, this is just not for me.
Yeah.
So
It's definitely a calling.
Yeah. So I was just in the process of trying to figure out what life was going to look like and where I was going with it. And I saw an ad in the paper. There was a car salesman ad and a real estate agent ad. And
you went for car salesman.
I was going to, but I know nothing about cars. So I asked my husband, we'd been recently married, and I was like, should I become a car salesperson or a real estate agent? And he was like, well, why don't you get your real estate license? That way you can at least help us buy our first house, if nothing else. We were renting at the time.
That's a good way to think of it.
Yeah. But I'd never met a realtor. Like, I knew nothing about real estate. So for those that are listening and thinking about real estate, this is a huge step above where I was. Like, I knew nothing about it. And I interviewed with the company. It was Century 21 Christian in Coon Rapids. And I didn't know that they basically would hire anyone. Like, I had no idea. You know, I'm 20.
So I could have had a job with them, basically.
You'd be great, Jake. Yes, yeah. Knuckles, you could do that. Yeah. No, I had no idea. Like, I bought this pretend little suit from Kohl's, and I sat down with them, and they said, you're hired. Now put yourself through school, come back, we're going to take 50% of your commission. And
50%?
Yep.
Oh, dang.
And buy yourself some business cards and signs, and on your way to selling real estate.
So basically, you had to do all the legwork, and they just...
Yeah.
They kind of were just there in the background.
Held my license there.
I see.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice. All right. And then did you stick with them for a while then, or?
I actually didn't. So I got my real estate license. So this was in 2001.
Okay.
So way back then. Got my license with Century 21 Christian. Gosh, my first client was amazing. His name was Eric, and he, as a brand new agent, we just got cell phones, okay? Like, I hadn't even had a cell phone. This is how old I am.
Did you have the flip phone or the
the black?
Razr?
Yeah, actually, it was just a flip phone. It was like or maybe it was a Nokia. I don't even know. It was. And there was no GPS. You guys, it was the Stone Age of real estate. They had just gotten through having real estate books, where they would drop off a book at a real estate office. You would go through it, and then you would show your buyers houses based on this book.
Oh, damn.
So they just went into having it be internet based.
Gotcha.
And having an online MLS. So here I am. I'm newly licensed. I'm 23 years old. The manager that I had at the time had never sold real estate before. He didn't care for the fact that I was asking more of the older seasoned agents how to do things. Because of course,
he didn't like that.
No, he didn't like that. So he yelled at me one day, and he was a very large man, and I'm just this tiny little 23-year-old, and I was like, nobody's going to be yelling at me. So I actually went to Counselor Realty soon after that, and I joined a team. And I was on a team with a seasoned agent and a couple of other agents, and I also worked for him about 4 hours a day. So that was super helpful. But I did sell a couple houses when I was at Century 21.
Okay.
So yeah, so that was good. It was good initial practice.
The startup for where you're at now.
Yep.
Would you say that like the education that you had like prior to that was like beneficial for like getting your license, or was it more learning along the way for
sure.
you?
So not only was the education beneficial for real estate, but my education in having a psychology degree actually ended up being extremely beneficial for real estate as well. Because so much about real estate is communicating, connecting with people, building relationships, listening, and then just walking through the process with people. But the education for real estate is relatively easy. I mean, at that time it was ProSource. It's now called Kaplan. And then there's also a school called the Minnesota Realty School.
Okay.
And if you're in a different state, there's other states that have schooling, obviously, as well. At some point I want to get my license in Florida, so I would get my license down there. You do get licensed per state.
I was going to say, is there some kind of like sister state kind of stuff where if you like are a realtor in one state, like that counts for another state?
It doesn't. Nope, you have to get licensed in each individual state that you're working in. And a lot of it has to do with the difference in just different rules and regulations that state might have. So like the forms are completely different in Minnesota versus in Wisconsin. Things are different too, even with like the home inspections. Like the inspectors are licensed in Wisconsin and they are not licensed in Minnesota.
Gotcha.
But the schooling, so it's so good. And then you go through schooling, and then we also have to have continuing education every year.
Okay.
Which I think is really beneficial too, because it just makes sure that we're staying on top of,
the laws are always changing.
Yeah, things are changing, but it also, a lot of the agency relationship stuff about like how we're representing people, who's representing who in the transaction, and then fair housing regulations and stuff like that. We do a lot of those.
And then one question I have from that is, does that change from like city to city and like county to county as well, or that you have to like kind of like keep an eye out on, or does it kind of stay the relative?
It stays pretty much statewide, but there are some things in the counties or cities, like in Minneapolis, they have what's called truth in sale of housing. So like they have specific inspections that are done on a property before it can go on the market. In Cambridge, we don't have that. A lot of the suburbs don't, but then there are certain cities that have that. But otherwise, we have a lot of septic systems here, so there are rules and stuff that go along with that, but not so much for regular schooling.
Like more septic systems in like Cambridge compared to like other towns? Or
so septic systems, so some people don't really know what a septic system is. So like if you live in a city, you have city sewer and city water. If you are in the country, you have a septic system. It could be a mound. It could be a mound. It could be, a drain field. So in the country, we have septic systems, and then we have private wells. Okay. So not just in Cambridge, but just around. All right. Yeah, like you probably had a septic system growing up.
We had one. I just wasn't sure if you meant like there was like more for some reason like in the area.
No, just like different.
Just being in the country.
Yeah, and you have to make sure that they're updated.
Gotcha.
Updated and stuff. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of that, what are some good like recommendations if you're trying to sell and like try to get your house on the market? What are some good like starting points to be aware of?
So one of the things that we do when we are meeting with clients to talk with them about getting their house ready is we actually provide them with a marketing plan. And as part of that marketing plan, there's a list of items to do to get your house ready for sale. So making sure that the curb appeal is there, making sure that everything in your house is ready for photos, because everyone is doing their first showing of a property online. So maybe they're sitting on their phone waiting for their kids to come out of school, or they're at work and they should be working and they're looking at houses. Everyone's on like HGTV, that we watch HGTV. It's such a popular thing to be looking at houses. Yeah. So we really want to make sure that somebody's house really shines and that it looks its very best. So we'll talk about staging. We'll talk about just how to declutter and what to do in the house to make it shine in its very best light. Cleaning, oh my goodness, just having it be a clean and nothing on the countertops, and everything picked up off the floor. So a lot of times what I do is a 2-step approach where I come in, I walk through somebody's house, give them some pointers on what to do, I take notes on it, and then I work on a market evaluation. Because we want to know where their equity, where their equity is in the property. That's obviously the biggest thing. People are excited about the fact that they've gained equity over the years. And then we sit down and I look at their equity position and where the comps are in the area and what they can expect to be able to sell their house for.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming equity just being how much your house value has increased over time then?
Yep. So the value of your house versus what you owe on it and any selling expenses too, and then that net of what you can receive from your house.
Gotcha. Is there like a specific like percentage that you like generally try to achieve from like how much you may have like owned on it versus how much you're asking for, or does it just vary?
So that's a good question. It varies on how the market is at the time. So in the last couple of years, we've seen that when a property is priced, as long as it's priced in line with where it should be priced, it's not overinflated in price. If it's priced where other properties have been selling, we are seeing that homes are selling for around asking or higher. So there's not really a specific amount to that. Like, is it 3% more? Is it, 2% more? Sometimes they sell for under if they've been sitting there a little bit longer. So it's so important to price your home appropriately to begin with so it doesn't become market worn.
On the other side of it for the seller market, then how would you go about like bringing someone into like checking out a different home? I've heard it being said that like they have a bidding price that they're willing to go to, and then for like some sellers that they'll try to like get like another like 8, or that like you're trying to sell them that extra 8,000 or something like that. Like, is there, which I thought was I've heard from some, and it's a little weird, but how do you go about
So are you asking, like, if I had a buyer and I was bringing a buyer through and, like, what that looks like for them?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yes, I kept on saying something.
No, that's okay. I knew what you meant. So basically, if for a buyer, so let's say you were looking at buying a house right now. One of the first things that we do is get you pre-approved. So look at, okay, this is what your debt to income ratio is. This is what you're comfortable spending every month. And just really honing in on where your budget is. Because we wouldn't want you to over exceed where you're comfortable payment wise and where you are, like your debt to income ratio. So basically we then have a loan officer sit down with you. And sometimes you want to talk to a couple of loan officers so that they can look at all the numbers with you, let you know what your monthly payment's going to be, let you know how much you have to bring to closing, because you do have to bring a down payment and then you have closing costs. Now there are like government assistance programs too. So like in Minnesota, we have what's called MHFA, which is Minnesota Housing and Finance Agency.
I don't know why, but that's just a fun acronym. It's just a fun acronym.
MHFA. It is. Yeah. So that's a down payment assistance program. There are government loans like FHA. If somebody's a vet, then they can get a VA loan or straight conventional loans. But you are very correct in that when you sit down with someone, you don't want to be looking at properties that are overextending what they're comfortable at, because so many people are writing offers that are higher. It's almost better than to, let's say somebody's approved for $300,000. Well, let's look at houses maybe that are like $280,000 or $285,000, knowing then that they might have to offer $300,000.
Gotcha. So you're automatically going to try to offset a little bit, keep it in budget. Okay.
Because otherwise they're going to be very frustrated with how the market is. So, and then this not historically, I mean, in the last couple of years, so through COVID, it is really bizarre what has happened with the real estate market. Just seeing that houses have been selling for more, and so much movement during COVID. So while COVID was going on and so many of us were staying in place, we did that for a while, but then us real estate agents were looked at as essential workers. So we were still showing houses, we were still meeting with clients, and we were doing that as safely as possible, but yet bringing people through and people were moving.
Did you have specific mandates that you yourself have to like follow on top of like the average like government mandate? Was there specific ones for like real estate agents, or was it kind of just trying to follow the basic ones?
I would say mainly what the CDC was putting out at the time. Let me grab my water too. Sorry, guys. looking at, when we'd walk into somebody's house, making sure that it was only one party at a time. Because sometimes when you walk into a house, man, there can be 5 different parties looking at this house at the same time, and it's more of an open house, even though it's showings. So making sure that we just had one party in at the time, wearing masks. At the beginning, when they just didn't understand what was going on too, a lot of times they would ask for us to wear gloves. Making sure that anybody who was sick was not allowed to come in the house. No children at the time, and only 1 or 2 decision makers. So there was definitely some rules that we had to follow initially.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been. I mean, I'm sure, like for everyone else, just a confusing time to just know how to properly continue doing your job, because being a real estate agent, that's commission based.
Yes.
It's just got to be so frustrating to try to figure out how to continue with your job.
Yep. How to continue
in that regard.
How to continue with your job, and one thing that really became even more popular during that time was video. Because we would do video showings too. So you would go into a property, do a video showing, or do a video open house. So I remember at the beginning of COVID, one of my team associates and I, we actually did that. We went to one of our listings and we just held a virtual open house on the property, because then people could still take a look at it from the comfort of their own home without having to get out. And that is something that I think is still continued. So often people are doing showings. Maybe they have a buyer who is out of state. And we've seen a lot of movement among the states in the last couple of years. Or maybe they're, we've got a sick kid at home or whatever that is. So we do FaceTime videos and showings that way. We've sold a number of houses sight unseen from the buyer.
And now, since you have this technology and you're comfortable with it, is that something you're continuing to do, or have you kind of stepped back?
Yeah, definitely stepped back some. I don't have as many Zoom meetings and stuff as I used to, but that's something that we learned how to do. Yeah. I mean, did you have to do a lot of Zoom meetings in college?
I was out of college at that point, so that worked out well. Mostly just for job interviews, I think would be the only thing that I was doing a lot of Zoom for.
Okay.
And I guess I was in the tail end of college, so there's some campus ministry Zooms and such, but not many.
No, I mean, we just never really had to do that. And I know that there's a lot of careers and stuff where people are on Zoom. And, obviously because of COVID, a lot of people are working from home now. And through that time, the real estate market just really boomed because so many people were wanting to have a larger house, maybe an office space, because they were working from home now.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then on the flip side of that, I will say that a lot of people also, because the market was going so quickly and they were having to make such quick decisions on houses, now that we've found in the last year or two, people are kind of maybe made a bad decision about that house that I could only see for 15 minutes.
So they're starting to be a little more rash.
A little bit more, yeah. They're like, man, I just made such a quick, rash decision, and now I'm wanting to move. But as you probably remember, the interest rates were so good, and they were historically the lowest that we've ever seen them. Where people were even getting interest rates of the 2s and 3s. And if they were a 15-year mortgage, it would have been in the low 2s sometimes, which is crazy. You guys, that has never happened. When I got into real estate in 2001, anything under 7 was good. And now we're back to that. Okay. Anything under 7 is still good, and interest rates are back to normalized. But it has caused a little bit more of a normalized market as well, which is positive too, I think.
Interesting. As we were talking about the technology kind of aspect of things, what would you say are some of the mainstays of your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. My iPhone, which I don't even know, I would be totally lost without my iPhone and obviously my laptop and my Mac computer, but
big Apple person then.
I am, and I never thought I would be. I was always oh, that's for those trendy kids, those musicians, those artists.
I have that Android, man. I have that green text bubble. I'm sorry.
I was always I always had the PC, and then I switched. But I just, we're online all the time. I mean, just always So the MLS, so that the multiple listing service is where we input all of our listings. They're syndicated everywhere. So like when people are going and they're using other search engines, so maybe they're going to a real estate agent's website themselves or their app, or they're going to Zillow or Redfin or realtor.com or anything like that. The majority of those properties are syndicated from the MLS. Every once in a while, if somebody's doing something on their own, they can also input it in some of those platforms too. But for sure, like our phones are always on us because we're constantly in communication with clients, with agents, with just people who are looking, and prospects, basically, people who are wanting to have us help them. So,
okay. Before we switch to the next target, next, I guess, set of questions, I guess the final thing I'd have is like you were talking about open houses and stuff like that. What does that kind of look like for like a seller?
So we actually have, a lot of times when we're listing a property, we'll have it be listed as coming soon. So we do all the paperwork with our sellers. You can go as quickly as you want or as slow as you want. Like my job is really to just walk someone through the process and be there to advocate for them, to give them the professional advice on how to move about putting their house on the market. But yet sometimes, especially I have some people who they've been in their house for 40 years. They don't want to just go like super quick. So I just walk them through it. And then other people are like, we need to do this week, which is great too. So just really listening to the needs of what our clients want. So if you're thinking about getting into the real estate profession, the biggest thing is following the cues of what your buyer or your seller want, listening to their needs. And then when we put a house on the market, we'll usually do coming soon for a few days, and then we go live for showings, usually on a Thursday or Friday. And depending on the price point, a lot of those homes will actually get offers then within the first couple of days and be sold, sometime that weekend or by Monday, which is great. So sometimes we're getting into the open houses where we either do an open house Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It seems like Sunday might almost be too late now to do an open house.
Really?
Yep, just because, we're hopefully selling it even before that. But open houses are a great way for people to get into looking at a house. Maybe they bring their real estate agent with them. Maybe they don't. If you have a real estate agent that you're working with, you always want to let the agents know who's hosting the open house that you're working with someone. Because if we're holding an open house, we don't want to step on their toes, and yet we want to give you as much information as we can about the house. In Minnesota, because we have agency, we are representing the seller. So when a buyer comes in, they're non-represented unless they have a contract with an agent.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's got to make it. Would you say that's helpful or hurtful to, I guess, both parties?
It's definitely helpful in the fact that the seller knows that you are advocating for them, that you're their broker and an agent of that broker that's representing them. If the buyer comes in and they are also with the same brokerage that you are, then it's actually what's called dual agency. So in Minnesota, we have dual agency where that brokerage is an umbrella over both parties. And you can't work to the detriment of either party.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of just like a safety measure for like both parties.
Yeah, it's just, it's interesting. Minnesota has had this for years and years, and it's just a way that people just know that you're advocating for them and you're basically looking out for their interests. And then buyers they usually have their own agent as well. They'll go into a contract with a real estate agent, and it could be, maybe it's a family friend, maybe it's somebody that they know in the community who is professional and who's been around for a long time, and then they know that agent is advocating for them.
Gotcha. Speaking of advocacy, how do you personally make sure that you're being seen as someone who advocates for their customer or for their clients? I know realty and real estate agents can have somewhat of a
sketchy,
skeezy, car salesman. Thank goodness you weren't in car sales.
Used car salesman.
Yeah. How do you stay above reproach in this kind of skeptical, critical environment?
Gosh, man. I would hope that people would recognize just from our own integrity standpoint. So both myself and our team, we really look at having high integrity, high morals, high professionalism, letting people know that through just a lot of times right now through video, through, putting out reels and stuff on Instagram and Facebook, showing that we are professionals in the marketplace by being basically the knowledge broker of the area. So letting people know what's going on in the area, in the marketplace, so that they whoever's consuming this information knows and sees us as a trusted advisor in that. But also, outside of that, making sure that our clients feel validated and valued, and we do a lot of extra special things, I think, for our clients. We have events, we have different ways that we're able to be in relationship and community with people, because that's super important to us, because we don't want people just to feel like, oh, they were just there to sell us a house and now they're gone. Like, we would never want that. Like, we want to be there the entire process. So if there's a question that somebody has about insurance, if there's a question somebody has about a contractor or a handyman or somebody that they can call, we want to be the first person that they connect with to say, hey, Michelle, who do you know that can help me with this? Like, we always want to be top of mind.
Gotcha. As I hear that makes me kind of feel like you might then get used a little bit, from your friends. How do you keep from how do you keep the professional side and the community side, since they're interwoven?
Yeah,
like that.
They are interwoven. Most of my good friends, they're clients of mine too. In fact, one of my best friends, we met because I was showing them houses, and she's one of my best friends now. I think it's like any profession. If you have a friend who is a doctor, which I do, and I probably abuse them way more than they abuse me. So it's anything, or you have somebody who is in a certain profession, you ask them questions. And real estate is such a thing, it's basically if you're at a party, most people are talking about the economy. They're talking about houses. They're talking about, the weather, but they're really, people love to talk about houses. And I love it too.
I was gonna say, let's see, what are the two from the I'm losing track of the housing show.
Chip and Joanna Gaines.
I have one friend from back home who, before he became a realtor, he was watching that, I think weekly, for a year or so.
Oh my gosh,
I think that helped
so
him
fun.
out.
Yes, it does help because you know a little bit more the terminology. You're paying more attention to color, to what they're doing for products. And I have to give a shout out to Ben and Aaron though on Hometown. Have you ever watched that?
I've not.
Oh, I like that one. That one's so good.
That was kind of a helpful kick for you, or?
Yeah. No. Oh gosh. Yeah. When back in the day, there was none of this HGTV stuff. I just think they're fun to watch now. They're it's relaxing.
Yeah. It helps you dream about your future house.
Yeah.
What was it? Home Improvement. That would have been the not Home Improvement. What is it? Extreme Home Makeover.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Remember that from years ago?
Yeah.
Ty. Oh yeah. That was
would have
fun.
been the original.
Those were the original ones.
Yeah.
That was actually kind of fun.
Oh man, I forgot.
I totally forgot about those shows.
Everyone's dream to get on somehow get on that.
Yeah, except they never really paid that much attention to the fact that these homeowners now would have to be paying extra in taxes. And those things just it's not always communicated properly, what the expenses are that somebody might have after they do something like that.
It's like when you win a car and then you automatically have all that insurance,
right?
And
your tabs are so much more.
Yeah, I would sell that so fast.
Oh gosh.
But all right, as we're closing down, I just have a couple of questions with what have been some weird experiences that you may have had between either as from customers or from other realtors or anything like that?
So there have been a couple of times that I have been in some really strange houses that have been an interesting experience. There was a house that I went to where my buyers and we walked in, and I had said, I knocked on the door, we said hello, and we walked to the left and just were looking around, and everything seemed normal. And then we walked to the right, and there was a big German Shepherd that was standing over the top of someone. And this was really sad, actually, because there was somebody who was there, like they had fallen, and they were also like hard of hearing, so they didn't hear us there, but they were passed out. And so this German Shepherd was like barking at us and like baring its teeth. And that was actually really scary because we were scared of that, but we were also scared for the person who was there. We found out that it was somebody who was renting the house who couldn't hear us, so we ended up having to call 911 and call the agent. And so that was a weird experience. Yes, a more funny experience is that I was in a house once where we walked down into a basement, and the basement was a little bit creepy, and I turned a light on, and a tanning bed like lit up, and there were a bunch of like mannequins and wigs and stuff all around, and it scared the living daylights out of us. We were so scared.
That would be that'd be a little weird.
A little weird, yeah. So I mean, there's just weird things that happen. Like, you know, one of the very first houses I ever showed to my first lovely buyer, we walked in and we were looking around, and then we opened a bedroom door, and there was like basically a whole family in this bed and in bed, and they forgot that we were coming. And so I'm like, oh, sorry, shut the door. And we run out, and the woman comes chasing after us. Her shirt's inside out and backwards, so the tag is right here. And she's like, oh, come back. Come back. You can see it. You can see it. And we're like, no, that's okay. I think we're okay. So just like weird, random.
Yeah, people are weird.
There's always something that, and I'm always learning. Even after, you know, over 20 years in this, I am learning something new, or there's a new experience or something that I exciting happens.
And then, like, is safety ever, like, a concern for you? Or, like, how do you, like, best prepare yourself, I guess, for different encounters?
So definitely wise to go with someone. So a lot of times we bring one of our team associates with on an appointment, or have like a safety check with like somebody at our office where, you know, if you're going somewhere, you're meeting someone that you've never met before, to make sure that maybe they're going to call you in 10 minutes and just check on you, or that you're going to text them. A lot of times we really try and get our clients to come into the office. And that's one reason we do pre-approvals too right away, is that their information is now with the lender so that you know who they are. I was not that wise when I was young. When I was 23, and maybe I was 24. I think I was 23. I went north of Cambridge to a little town called McGrath, and I was going to meet this guy up there. And I didn't think anything of it. I was going to meet him at 20 acres, middle of the woods, this mobile home. And I did. I drove all the way up there by myself. I met him, and he ended up being the most lovely man. In fact, he and his wife and their kids are in this community. They're amazing people, but he could have been a serial killer.
Yeah.
But he was,
for all you knew at that
for
point.
all I knew, I did not know him at all. Yeah. And I actually just saw him and his wife at downtown, or in Eden Prairie, at a Tim Hawkins event the other day.
Nice.
So he probably doesn't even remember that, but like it was 20 some years ago, and he could have been whoever, but he was great. So,
oh man, yeah.
But not smart on my part.
Yeah. As soon as you said, oh my gosh. Just thinking about like what my mind would be thinking of as I'm like just driving through and like just pulling up to even to the house.
I'm like driving on this driveway, coming up. I'm like, I don't hope my cell phone even works out here. I don't know. Yep. I have always been probably a little too trusting, but
gotcha. I mean, it's just gotta be a little helpful in the real. I mean,
it
pros
is.
And cons,
Yeah, there's pros and cons. Yeah, but I did. At one point, I had a couple of interactions that were a little bit more suspect. So I had my uncle get me some mace and stuff at one point.
Nice.
And, yeah.
Nice. I remember I got I had a thing of pepper spray that my grandma asked if I wanted one, and I was like, at first I was like, I don't know if I need that.
Right.
But then afterwards I was like, you know what?
Might as well.
Might as well. Yeah. If I'm getting
know.
pepper spray now, I'm getting pepper spray. This would be fun. You know, if worst case scenario, you know, like the friends and I just end up just pepper spraying each other somehow. Worst case scenario. I don't know how that would happen, you know, but
you have it in your car and it gets too hot or something and it like blows up on you, like that sounds terrifying.
You know, it'd be an
experience. But if you and your
friends
friends just pepper spray each other, that would be horrible.
That would be bad. I have glasses, but that wouldn't help at all. No. But yeah, I think I just remember when I first opened up the container and I look at like the little like it has the tab or whatever to flip over, and like I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is super easy to move, and then Toss it on the keychain. Felt weird about that. Put it in the pocket. And I was like, let me just pull it out to just see what it looks like again. I pulled it out and it's already armed. Ready to go. Just from being in my pocket 30 seconds. I was like,
nope.
You're going to go into the cart and you're just going to stay there in the pocket.
Exactly.
Anyways, random
so
side.
Thankfully, I haven't had to do it. So again, if you're thinking about real estate overall, thankfully it's been a very safe profession. Mm. But the biggest thing is just making sure that you are, just being with people and taking people with you, because people are willing to go. Like if it seems like a little bit of where you're a little nervous about it.
Or just get to check out an interesting house.
Yes.
Look at some fun architecture.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All of that. Would you have any other kind of just advice for people who are either in real estate or like buyers or sellers? Any things you've learned over the years?
I would say for people who are contemplating a career in real estate, because that is something so many people are interested in getting into real estate. Mm-hmm. If you do, I would say go and job shadow another agent, like somebody that you know, because I have a number of people who come and shadow me, and they just like hang out for a day, and they either find, oh yeah, this is something that I would like to do, or they find, oh my goodness, I had no idea that you work this hard. Because it really is like you have to be constantly doing stuff and calling people and connecting with people and being productive. A lot of times in real estate, like you can be just kind of spinning your wheels and it doesn't go anywhere. And so there is, there's that perception, I think, sometimes that agents don't have to work very hard. Yeah. We do. For those of us who are productive and we want to do well and succeed and have it as a career, it really is something that has to be done full time. And something where you really have to give it your all. And that's not just for yourself and for in my case, for my team, but also for my buyers and my sellers, because I want to make sure that they know that I am giving them as much as I can as well, so that they feel well taken care of and valued within it. So again, just like shadowing someone, learning more about it and like what it takes to be a real estate agent. And then once you are into it, really giving it a good 2 years, because really in order to be successful, most of the time people do need to give it about 2 years, and then they'll see that, yes, I can continue to do this. There's such high turnover with it. It's not an easy career.
Plus I'm sure there's so much like financing, like thinking that you have to put into it too, with just like the whole like, all right, like I probably won't make any money for
a few months at least.
For the first bit, and then you gotta actually like budget yourself out.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and running it like a business. Like real estate is a business. So when you do start to see some income coming in, you really want to set it up where you have the funds going into a business account, and then you're paying yourself from there, because you have to be putting aside, at least 35% for your taxes. You have broker fees that you have off of that initial commission. So like there's a lot of expenses and marketing, and if you have an assistant, you've got a lot of expenses going into it. Yep.
Gotcha. Just hire out some neighbor kid.
Yeah, hey, actually that's a good idea. Can you please go and do this for me and drop these flyers off? And
although now that McDonald's is paying like $16 an hour, you gotta compete with that.
Gotta be competitive. So that's tough. That's so tough.
All right, and then for buyers and sellers, anything you tell them?
I would say for buyers and sellers to not just go with, my brother-in-law just got his real estate license, or except for the fact you want to have a good relationship with them, or my cousin got their real estate license. It really is important to, I think, interview a couple of realtors, make sure that you're comfortable with them, make sure that they have a good track record of actually performing and being a good advocate and negotiator for their clients, looking at reviews. So many people have Google reviews and Zillow reviews, and so checking that information out, making sure that they're following up and having good communication with people. Looking at the photos. My goodness, I was just working on some comps and stuff for a potential listing, and I was looking at the photos that people were taking, and sometimes it's appalling. Like they're not hiring professional photographers and videographers to go and do their photos, which makes no sense. So if you're a seller, making sure that your agent is actually really on top of their game and professional about it.
Gotcha. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I think that's
ooh, is your chair breaking?
My chair's starting to break. I'm just gonna sit really still. Final question that I almost forgot about is there anything that you've been consuming recently, a piece of media that has caused you to sit back and reflect?
Wow, that's a good question. I would say I listen to a lot of podcasts, and Tom Ferry is a coach, so he has numerous agents underneath him, and he has got numerous coaches. And so I actually have a real estate coach. His name is Mark, and he's part of the Tom Ferry ecosystem.
Okay.
And just getting on and like listening to stuff like that, like there's so much content out there, you guys, with podcasts and with YouTube and videos, and so just learning and growing that way. I'm not really reading any books right now that are real estate centered. I have a couple of more like Christian spiritual books that I'm reading right now, so I'm trying to go that way with those. But there's always good books too.
Gotcha. Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be real estate.
No. Oh my gosh. So speaking of that, like Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, that is a really good book as you're starting to think about getting into real estate. That's a great book. Like there's old Dale Carnegie books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, Napoleon Hill books. I'm trying to think of what his, I can't remember the name of his book right now, but there is The Richest Man in Babylon. So just anything too that has to do with communicating well, with finances, those are just really good books to put in our brain.
Mm. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Lundeen.
You're welcome. You can call me just Lundeen. That's what I call my husband. It's just Lundeen.
What up, Lundeen? We're back in high school sports.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you again for being with us today, and for even just helping me get this apartment that I now have.
Yes.
Definitely was
That's
impactful to me.
Appreciate it. And we're happy to have you in the community.
Yeah,
it's so fun.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, learning all the good places to be.
Good.
So.
Yep. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you very much for another episode of Kings and Queens of Miniature Castles.
I love it. That's adorable.
All right. Bye.
Oh, cute.
Miniature Castle.